Yeah, so it's great to be back in Spiders doing a gig. I did one here 10 years ago, so I'm back by popular demand. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm one of those people that very often when I hear things for the first time, I get them completely wrong. First time I heard about gaslighting, I thought it was that English football fan that went to the World Cup and he was lighting his own farts. And the first time I saw on Facebook something about a gender reveal party, never occurred to me that there was a baby on the way. I went in a completely different direction. And the first time I heard the phrase cancel culture, I heard the word cancel as a verb. And I thought, what a great idea. We could cancel some culture. There's way too much of it about. Opera, that can go for a fucking start. I like to go on adventure holidays. Ibiza, Shagaloof, Knock. No, I like to go on holidays where you can do stupidly dangerous things. You know, the type of holiday you get up in the morning, you put on sun cream so you don't get burnt. Then you go paragliding in the afternoon where you could get killed. I've never done a bungee jump though. Anyone here ever done a bungee jump? Yeah, a couple of them, yeah. I've never done a bungee jump because frankly the idea of being weighed and then having some guy in dreadlocks and cut off jeans use that weight to calculate how much elastic to tie me to so that I don't smash my face into the ground when he pushes me off a bridge. It's never really appealed to me. I've ziplined, I've done zipline, have you heard of that? Ziplining, yeah. When I first heard about that, I thought that'd be really cool. Well, if I'm honest, what I thought was that'd be really Bond-like. And every young guy grows up wanting to be a bit like James Bond, you know, to be shaking things instead of stirring them. And I thought what would happen is you'd rock up and they'd give you an industrial strength dinner jacket and you'd fling it over the zip wire and you'd go hurtling off down between these massive great glass skyscrapers being picked out by searchlights. Now, not shitty little ones, the big ones like they had for King Kong. And the music would be blaring in the background. Dun, 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 dun. Now, I know that's not the Bond music. I can never remember the Bond music. I think that music works okay with that bit, doesn't it? Yeah. You're probably thinking, well, if that's the case, Sean, you could just do the bit about Mission Impossible. I would, but who the fuck would ever believe anyone would grow up wanting to be like Tom Cruise? So I thought that's what it'd be like, dun, dun, but it's not like that at all. Instead, you pitch up into a quarry in Leitrim and they zip you into a nylon onesie with a hook on the back to go over the zip wire. And then they give you a crash helmet, and I think you know the type of crash helmet I'm talking about. It's the type of crash helmet you look at and you think, this would be fuck all use in the event of a crash. But they do have one very important consideration towards safety. They have a guy who's about halfway down wearing a high-vis jacket, and his job is to warn you if you're going too fast. And of course, if you get a signal from a guy in a high-vis jacket, you're going to pay attention to it. Because you know if he's wearing a high-vis jacket, he's been on a course. And if you get that signal, what you're supposed to do is to stick your arms out to slow yourself down. And of course, if you already know you're going too fast, every fibre in your being is going to want to stick your arms out and get them ripped off. And I'm thinking, if I get that signal, would it be alright if I just shit myself instead? Because apart from anything else, it'll probably add a bit of a drag factor to the onesie. I've done a parachute jump. I know you're probably looking at me thinking, I don't think he has the bollocks to do a parachute jump. To be honest, you don't really use your bollocks all that much. Unless you want to leave them zipped outside the jumpsuit so they flap in the wind on the way down. Fuck all used to. And there's two types of parachute jumps you can do. You can do a static line jump, which you do from 5,000 feet, where you jump out and you're in control. Or you can do a tandem jump, which you do on a bicycle. Just checking that you're listening. Now, a tandem jump, you do it from 10,000 feet, but somebody else is in control. So, of course, I did the static line jump. Because if I'm going to plummet to my death from 5,000 feet, I want to be in total control the whole way. And they give you one whole day's training when you do a parachute jump, which manages to sound both like way too much and nowhere near enough. And they start off by telling you could die. Sometimes people die doing parachute jump. Die. I'm taking notice. Very often the side effect of an unsuccessful parachute jump can be death. Death. I'm just writing down the bullet points and thinking I could have just given the 150 quid to charity. And then they start to train them properly and they give you your jumpsuit and they give you the crash helmet. Now look at the crash helmet and thinking, I see something like this before. And they start off by teaching you how to fall. So first of all, you just stand and you fall. Now I nailed that. Because I did loads of that as a toddler and a fair bit of it as a student. And then they get you to stand up on a table and jump down and fall. To be honest, not that much more difficult. And then they go up to 6 feet. And that's as high as they go, because apparently that's representative of jumping out of a plane at 5,000 feet. But the really clever thing they do, after all that talk about that, the really clever thing they do is how they make sure you do jump out of the plane. And the way they do this is by using the shittiest planes imaginable. Real end-of-life planes. These planes are so old, they should be in an old planes home, with their wheels up, their wings folded, and a blanket across their fuselage. And by the time this thing has hurtled down the runway to achieve takeoff speed, there's one thing you know with absolute certainty. There's no fucking way I'm going to be in this when they try to land it. That's if they do try to land it, because I noticed that the pilot was wearing a parachute as well. And I'm thinking maybe they just get this baby up to 5,000 feet, fly her out over the sea, we all get the fuck out. Maybe it flies on till it runs out of gas, maybe it's a disposable plane. Anyway, I'm sitting there in the plane and I have my helmet on and I'm in my jumpsuit. I've left my bollocks on the outside because it might be important. And I'm going over the training in my head and I know that when I jump out I have to count to 5 and then look up to make sure that the parachute is open. And the way you do that, because of all the adrenaline and everything, is you go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. Even if you've never been to Mississippi, you can do it apparently. And I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and I finally get the tap on the shoulder. And as I'm floating serenely down to earth, it suddenly occurs to me that they could have just told us to jump out and shout fuck till we ran out of breath. Because that takes about 5 seconds as well. What else did I want to tell you about me? Oh yeah, I had a disastrous Valentine's Day date this year. Yeah, I know. But going out on Valentine's Day is very stressful anyway, you know, especially if you've been in a relationship for a few years and you're not yet engaged. Not looking at anyone in particular. And you're sitting there thinking, I wonder can I knock another year out of this thing without having to propose? And meanwhile, every second fucker in the restaurant is down on one knee. And you're scared shitless you'll drop your knife. And you'll have to bend down to pick it up. And when you're down there, you'll see her doing the little clappy thing and you're going, oh no, I just dropped my knife. That wasn't my dilemma though. My dilemma was because I decided to buy lingerie as a Valentine's Day gift. But due to a combination of me being colourblind and her being ginger, I didn't know what colour lingerie to get. And it's only so, you can only stand in front of a lingerie display for so long, hoping that somebody with ginger colouring will walk by so that you get an idea. In retrospect, I don't think it was the colour of the lingerie that was the problem. I think it was more to do with the fact that it was a second date and I turned up with a bag from Ann Summers. I have had a rich and varied relationship history though. When I was in college, a girl I was going out with sent herself anonymous letters warning herself about me, which is interesting. So I doubled down. I sent myself anonymous letters as well. We got another 6 months out of that relationship with all the letters going back and forward. I'm not on Tinder. If you go to enough comedy clubs in Ireland, you'll hear loads of comedians talking about being on Tinder. Frankly, it's bad enough to have to compete with them for stage time. I was going out with somebody a few years ago and she had a real penchant for dirty talk, real filthy stuff, you know, way beyond porn film dirty talk, probably closer to prostitute level. Now, I'm okay with that, you know, I'm broad-minded, I'm okay with that, but she wanted me to join in. And I really didn't have a lot of experience in dirty talk, you know. Don't get me wrong, I had a lot of filthy things I wanted to do with her. Could probably have had to go drawing pictures of some of them, but didn't really have the vocabulary to put them into words, you know. Plus, I'm a bloke, and on how she expected me to multitask. Recently went to a dream therapist. Went to see this dream therapist because I have this weird recurring dream where myself and my mother are both serial killers. And we buried all the bodies around our house. But for some strange reason, we buried them standing up. And in the dream, I'm worried that because of soil erosion due to climate change, because I'm very environmentally minded, that the tops of their heads are going to start showing through. So I'm going around with one of those little plastic bucket and spades you get at the seaside, and I'm just doing this in the dream. And I'm telling the dream therapist this, and she's looking at me kind of strangely. And I think she's really impressed with this. This is probably the best dream she's ever heard. She's thinking, I might get a book chapter out of this guy. If he has more of these, I might get a whole fucking book. And then I'm starting to think maybe that's not what she's thinking at all. That maybe she's looking at me and thinking, maybe he is a real serial killer. And maybe he's come in here because it's a safe place to make a confession. Because of doctor-patient confidentiality. And the more I look at her, the more I become convinced that this is what she's thinking. And then I realise she's not a real doctor, so there is no doctor-patient confidentiality. So I killed her. So I may not be a serial killer yet, but I think it was the Chinese philosopher Sun Tzu that said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. What else did I do? Oh yeah, I took up running a few years ago, but because of my advancing age and the fact that I was an altar boy for a number of years, I have very dodgy knees. There's an awful lot of genuflecting and kneeling goes on when you're an altar boy for one reason or another. But it's cramp that really gets me, cramp runs in my family. My mother was a martyr to the cramp. My mother, the serial killer. And she was always getting cramp in odd places, okay? I don't mean in odd places on her body, in odd locations. She once got a cramp at a wake. One of those country wakes where they have the coffin in the house and the two little kneelers and everybody goes in and he pretends to say a few prayers and stuff like that. And I remember I did say to her on the way, and I said, now listen, we won't stay too long because you know what you're like with cramp. And she said, I'll be fine. I goes, or at least do some stretching on the way up to the coffin. But she wouldn't listen to me. You know what mothers are like anyway. So anyway, we're kneeling there. We've been there a few minutes and I said, come on, we'll go. We didn't even know him that well. She says, I can't get up. I says, what do you mean you can't get up? She said, I can't get up. I've got cramp. And I said, oh, for fuck's sake. I did warn you. I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, we've been here ages. They're going to think you had an affair with the man or something. And then she started laughing. That's never a good thing in a wake. And I got a cramp once during sex. And the lady that I was with was a few years younger than me. So I didn't want to let on. Because I think nothing accentuates the age difference in a relationship more than having to stop in the middle of sex and say, sorry love, but I've got cramp. So I tried to style it out. So when you see somebody in a football match going down with cramp and another player comes over and they lean down on the top of their foot, I tried to get her up on the end of my leg. I pretended it was something I'd seen in the Kama Sutra. So now I always stretch and warm up before sex, religiously. Well, not religiously, that'd be weird. Yeah. But it's very hard to work it into the foreplay, It's very key at this next bit that I do not make eye contact with anyone. Things I'm going to do to you. Oh, I'm going to make this a night to remember. I'm going to rock your world. I can't wait to get you up them stairs. See, I did tell you I was shit at talking dirty. I've been Sean Marshall. You've been an absolutely fantastic audience. Thank you so much.